If you're a fan of a little bit of chaos, you got all of that and perhaps even a bag of chips, as they say, this past weekend with what all went on in the world of college football. Qualk, big guy, always great to have you on, man. Hope you're doing well, brother.
Swanny, it's good to be with you. I hope your bag of chips was a good one and not, like I was thinking Lay's potato chips, like the Ohio State defense laid an egg on Saturday. That's probably not a great bag of chips, but there are others that would be better. So I hope you had a better bag of chips than that.
Yeah, look, I am, I like the salt and vinegar Lays, but I would also go with the Wise salt and vinegar as well. So a Wise weekend perhaps for some. But look, last week, Clemson loses to Georgia, and by the slimmest of margins, a defensive score is the difference. And I had to, like, all week, I don't know what it was like for you and Kelly, but all week I got to be like, pumped, like I'm out there with a fire hose trying to put out fires for people. I said, it's a long season. And again, Clemson didn't move up in the polls this week. They were jumped by Iowa and Oregon, as I mentioned earlier in the show. But even still, I mean, Clemson's in a great spot. I don't know what everybody's so worked up about.
Well, let me say, I don't want to dismiss those folks outright who are wringing their hands a little bit and they're going, I don't see a path. I'm not sure the path is there. But it's the way that it was being framed last week that really is the problem for me. Because on the one hand, if you want to look at Clemson's schedule and say, we just got the news that it appears that Phil Dracovic is out for the year for Boston College. Peyton Wilson is now out for the year, the veteran linebacker at NC State. You look at the way that the Atlantic Division foes have acquitted themselves in the first couple of weeks. It's a disaster area. I mean, truly, it is a horrific, nightmarish mess to look at Clemson's schedule. The best team on their schedule is probably Pittsburgh right now in the league. I don't know that Pittsburgh's going to be ranked. NC State lays an egg and loses their best player, their heart and soul. BC loses their quarterback, and wide receiver got dinged and came back. But I mean, you're looking at that schedule going, where's the win? Like, how in the world are we going to make it this ground? So I get that. I understand that. But the people who were acting like, did you see how good Alabama looked? Like, Alabama's going to look that good for 12 games. Did Ohio State, they won by 2 touchdowns. They're not going to lose any games. Right, okay. What Oklahoma, their offense looks way better than ours. Okay, sure. Let's wait till they play Iowa State, where they always lose, or they play Kansas State, if Skylar Thompson's available, where they always lose.
Right.
Like, people who acted like Clemson's not making the playoff because primarily all these other teams look like they're so fearsome and they're going to just run roughshod through their schedule. That's just laughably insane. Have you ever seen college football before? Have you ever watched a game? Like, is this your first time? That's what I want to say to people. Chill out on that. The thing about Clemson's own schedule not being of benefit in terms of giving you 11 quality wins and a body of work that's better than a UCF team that could have made it, of course, certainly that is a concern. But the part where Clemson wasn't going to make it because everybody else is going to go through the season unscathed was just silliness. And we saw why. We saw why week 1, because Oklahoma almost blew a 90,000-point lead in a quarter and a half to Tulane. But then we, of course, saw it last week where Ohio State lost to an Oregon team missing its 2 best defenders. I mean, it's silliness.
Well, and in addition to that, we talk about Ohio State. Now, look, I get it. They got Penn State, Michigan, and Michigan State later in the season. But, I mean, over the next, 4 weeks or more, I mean, they really don't have any true benefit at this point, any more so than Clemson. I mean, they play Tulsa, Akron, Rutgers, Maryland. I mean, it's not a murderer's row at this point either.
No, I agree with you. Look, there's no doubt that when you've got Penn State, Michigan, and Indiana, who all 3 have a chance to be ranked, a much improved Michigan State team that Miami's got to be careful about this weekend going down there.
Yeah.
That division is really good. In my opinion, that's either the best or the second best division in football. I said before the year, the best 2 divisions in football are the Big Ten East, because I thought Michigan, Penn State would bounce back. Indiana and Rutgers, I thought would have a decent year. Michigan State's been a bit of a surprise. That in the Pac-12 South with USC, Utah, Arizona State, that I thought that division was pretty good as well. The Big Ten East is going to give them some quality wins. But from a program standpoint, why does Ohio State get the benefit of the doubt? Let's start looking at body of work, okay? 2014, they won a national championship. They've been to some playoffs. I get that. They made the national championship game last year. I get that. Let's take a look at last year for a second. And I'm going to die on this hill, Swanny. I started laying this out about a month ago. It got stronger for me after I watched them lose the first half at a Minnesota team that nobody's really super confident is going to make a bowl game. I watched them get blown up on the line of scrimmage in Minnesota. If you didn't take the 15 points with Ohio State, you're a crazy person. I thought Ohio State would win by like 3 or 6. But that 15 points, when you saw Minnesota's offensive line up on 3rd and 2 and just smack Ohio State around and ask them how they liked it, you didn't think Mario Cristobal was going to come in with an offensive line times 1,000 and do the very same thing to Ohio State? They rushed for 200, passed for 200. They did whatever they wanted against Ohio State. Now, Ohio State shot themselves in the foot with 3 turnovers on downs in a game, but be that as it may, Ohio State is going to come up against Michigan, who just ran the ball for the 3rd and 4th highest totals in the Jim Harbaugh era. You're going to run up against Penn State, who looks good on the line of scrimmage. You're going to run up against Indiana, who, despite the way they looked against Iowa, I think their offense is pretty good. You're going to run up against Rutgers. You're not going to be able to just show up like you did last year and then through 2.5 quarters and then decide to turn it on midway through the 3rd. They played one good game in 2 years, Swanee. Since 2019, they played one good game. They played a bunch of lousy games, won them all. We put them in the playoff because somebody had to go there and because they had some cachet. They were really good against Clemson. They were miserable against Alabama. And that they were not very good against Minnesota, not very good at home against Oregon, who's a good team. I mean, I think Oregon's top 10 caliber team, but let's not pretend that Ohio State wasn't a 15-point favorite. Ohio State's played one good game in 2 years. That's fewer than Clemson has. Now, I don't care if there's a number next to the name of your opponent or not. We know if you're playing well or not. That's not something that can just sneak by us. It's not 1983 where half the country's on tape delay and there's only 2 national games every week, right? We know if Ohio State's playing well or not. I am looking forward to the truth tellers in our media to start telling people the truth about Ohio State, that is a program that has major issues at all 3 levels of their defense. They did last year with much better talent. And offensively, they have been, abhorrent at times in the first half of about their last 10 or 12 ball games. That's the truth about Ohio State. That's why they lost to Oregon on Saturday.
He's on Twitter at Qualk Talking. Qualk, part of that this year, of course, being the adjustment to C.J. Stroud taking over at quarterback for that offense. But, I kind of feel the same to a degree. And I asked DJ Uiagalelei that this past weekend, what's the difference in having to be the guy? And he kind of elaborated on it. I haven't played the audio here on the show. Somehow it ended up being like a one-on-one with me and DJ because they said Dabo was going to be available. So I'm sorry if you had to play that audio and listen to me ask 100 questions. But I would say, the thing about it is I think that there is a huge difference. And I believe in addition to that, you can probably equate some of the additional pressures of NIL deals and things of that nature that these guys kind of have that players have never really had to deal with before.
We had some folks on our show today who were reaching out and saying, well, maybe it's NIL, maybe the pressure's getting to them, all this stuff. And to me, if you're trying to find one factor, you're missing a point. I talked to a lot of coaches, Swanee. One of the great – I had this rant on the show today. It was more of a monologue than a rant because I was trying to be very serious and let people know, like, when I take coaches' sides, okay, and I do a lot. I know it sounds like on our show that I'm an apologist for coaches. I'm very, very slow to criticize coaches because I know that the decision-making there is based on a number of factors that we, the fans, are not privy to. And we don't know if the play that they called was executed correctly. We don't know why they come to the conclusions that they do. And oftentimes when you hear why, you go, well, I probably would have made the same choice. That's just been my experience in talking to coaches from a bunch of sports. Why is this athlete not playing well? You don't know what's going on at home. You don't know what's going on with the girlfriend or boyfriend. You don't know that their class schedule didn't get significantly more difficult. You don't know they got a family member in the hospital. You don't know, that this is a very quiet person and that there was leadership from last year that got that player motivated. And now all of a sudden, a lot of the loud voices in the locker room are gone. Again, I'm not saying that's what's happening with DJ. I'm just suggesting there are a lot of people who want to make it like we talk about one issue voters in politics. We want to make it a one factor explanation. Oh, just fix this. We're fine. And so people say, you got to fix the play calling or you got to fix the line or he's got to focus more, or NIL's got him distracted, or this or that or the other thing. To me, there's about 10 or 12 things that could potentially be factors with DJ. And to me, Swanny, I boil it down to one play. And I'm not actually talked to a coach on this, so don't quote me. But this is with my naked eye. And then what Dabo Swinney said after the game, I tried to kind of piece this thing together. You remember the play where Justin Ross is wide open in the end zone? There's nobody even close. They roll the pocket right, and he misses him. Now, they score on the drive. It's not a big deal. DJ misses him. After the game, in one of those monologues where you ask him a question and Dabo goes off on something else, he's talking about this, and he says, that was probably on Justin, okay? And I started thinking, now, wait a second, man. That guy's wide open, okay? If you're playing backyard football, it doesn't matter what route you were supposed to run, right? You just throw where the guy is. He's wide open. Just throw where he is. But I started thinking, okay, you've got a guy who clearly was seeing ghosts against Georgia. He needs help in a lot of areas to be successful. He's got to have trust and a lot of things going right. If that play calls for Justin Ross to run to the pylon, and that's the route that he's supposed to run, if I'm DJ and my mental situation is not great, if my level of confidence is fairly low, the thing I might have to do for a while is throw the ball where it's supposed to go. Then when I get a comfort level that I, DJ, can execute that throw, then we can start throwing it where people are. And to me, what Dabo is saying is, Justin, sometimes a receiver who's wide open might be able to just stand there and catch the ball. But right now, Justin might have to run the most precise route of his career because DJ can't just throw it to the open guy. He's got to throw it to the space that his brain tells him is where he's got to throw the ball and trust that the guy's going to get there, because that's how low his confidence is with certain throws. It's just a theory. It's just a thought. But I was wondering, why do you miss a wide open guy? And then why does the coach say it's on the receiver when the guy's wide open? It shouldn't matter. And it's because of that element right there.
Listen, I don't know if this is some sort of like Monk breakdown that I've missed. I don't know if you watch the show Monk, but that's kind of what I feel like here, Qualk, because I thought the same thing when I watched it initially. I'm like, DJ airmailed this thing. And then you hear the post-game comments and Dabo says, Justin Ross mistimed his jump. I thought he needed a step ladder to get up there to get that football.
That's right. And look, maybe he's saying if the route is to go to the pylon and DJ really, even though it wasn't where the receiver could catch it, if DJ threw the ball where it was supposed to be and the receiver didn't get there, if you're dealing with a guy who's just a little bit fragile, I'm not saying he's going to break next time and he won't be usable, but I'm saying he's just a little bit fragile. I think for the coaches, they've got to start instilling that confidence by saying, look, man, you do what you were supposed to do. Because we know that Dabo's not playing patty cake out there because he reamed DJ out for the high throw on the tunnel screen, which, by the way, that's my biggest concern, is DJ throwing the ball 1,000 miles an hour on a screen where touches sometimes. I mean, you don't want to do what Stanford's offense did the first week against Kansas State and time it with a sundial, getting the ball out there. You don't want to do that. But just take your time a little bit, man. Just chill out, relax. On a throw like the one that Ross, you should be able to let it go. But if he's not, if he's still throwing to the right spot, then you got to take the small victories, even if it means an incomplete pass.
William Qualkenbush is on Twitter at Qualk Talk. So, Qualk, there have been people that have texted me that said, man, I don't like the way Dabo Swinney's handling the Lynn J. Dixon situation. Dabo, we played the audio earlier. He comes out and says he needs to grow up. And then my thought was, is it how Dabo's handling it or CJ Spiller? And because I feel like you listen to Tony Elliott, he says, hey, look, I give autonomy to those guys. I'm assuming that Dabo Swinney's autonomy on that, on who's going in is going to come down to what Spiller thinks. And if there's a little button of heads going on in that locker room, who in their right mind is going to go and say, well, you know what? CJ Spiller just doesn't know what it takes. Right?
I mean, yeah, I'm 100% with you. Look, I understand people wondering, right, being puzzled by whatever's going on with the running back rotation. But when Dabo Swinney, I mean, again, we can go back to the Fred Davis stuff. Like, I mean, Fred Davis played on Saturday. Would I have played Fred Davis? No. Do I have all the information out there? No. I don't know what he did in August camp. I don't know if the guy was running for 36 hours straight. I have no idea. I have no clue. But we know that Dabo Swinney will potentially cost himself a football game to punish a kid. So we know it's not that. We know Dabo's not going soft, right? Don't we have that? I mean, to me, don't we have that that knowledge based on
historically
years.
speaking, that would be the case. He doesn't seem, yeah.
So we have years of data to back that up. I don't know why all of a sudden we think that Dabo doesn't know how to handle discipline or wouldn't do it in a way that we would approve of. And again, that goes back to my theory about talking to coaches and understanding, when you fill in the blanks that obviously they don't want to get into publicly, then most of the time we probably agree with the choices that they made. Most of the time. I'm not saying absolve everybody all the time and just let it ride. I'm just saying when in doubt, trust coaches who have proven themselves trustworthy. I didn't understand why he started, got 2 carries, and then sat. And that's the part that I don't get. Because if he's in the doghouse, starting the game and then coming out, that tells me that there might be some stuff going on in practice. There might be some stuff going on off the field. I don't know. But there might have been something about his body language in the game that they didn't like.
Well, that was the only thing I could figure. I mean, with him starting, I thought, well, maybe when they said we're going to go to Lynn J or Kobe or whoever went in, he copped an attitude. Like that was the only thing I could surmise from it, right? Because he started.
Based on what we know, right? Like he said, he's got to be in Spiller's eye. He's got to grow up, And you do feel like there's probably some off the field on that. Like when coaches talk about guys need to grow up, a lot of times it's talking about off-field behavior. So, I mean, we'd be silly to think that there's not some behavioral going on there. But if it is a body language situation, if it is root for your teammates time, I mean, we know that Dabo loves to talk about how his starters are over there rooting for his teammates. I didn't watch NJ during the game when he was – I was too concerned with how was Shipley playing, how's the O-line doing, how's Pace doing this, that, and the other. But Dabo was, and C.J. Spiller was. And I'd be shocked if that wasn't some sort of a factor in to some degree because, like I say, if it was just off the field, he wouldn't have started. It's not like the guy, came off the bench in the third quarter like in the Georgia game. He started the game and then was removed and not let back on until deep into the third quarter.
All right, Qualk, about 1:50, and I'm sure you could go an hour and 50 on it. Jacksonville State, Florida State, Zarek Cooper. Just give us your thoughts on that.
That's why I'm baffled. It's absolutely baffling. I just went on this long monologue about how we should give coaches the benefit of the doubt. And then there are times where I've talked to coaches and gone, yeah, but like, that's not a good reason to do that. Or, well, you're really overthinking this. Like, you're making this really hard. For 2 different people at Florida State to come out and say they were concerned that a team who was operating inside of its own 40-yard line, outside of his own 40-yard line, I should say, on the other side, that they were going to get 30 yards in 5 seconds, get down, call timeout, and kick a 55-yard field goal. And that's why you don't put your 4 best hands guys at the 10-yard line with instructions to not go forward, only go backward. What in the world is that? That's the most asinine explanation that there ever has been for anything. Why in the world? I understand playing 2-man. I've done that in Madden. But you also tell your safeties to bail. Get back. Don't let anything over your head. If I can do it on Madden, you can tell 2 presumably lifelong football players not to get caught staring into the backfield. And then, why are you quitting on the play? Go and make the tackle. This is why it's hard to make losers winners. Because of habits like that, stuff like that. Winning football teams don't do that. Winning cultures don't do that. Losing cultures do. This is so far from a winning culture. It's not even funny. I could keep going on it. I know we're out of time, but it is the most egregious coaching plus effort situation at the end of a game that I have ever seen in all my life.
Qualk, buddy, always great to talk to you. We'll catch up next week, man.
Thanks, Swanny. Good to be with you.
Traffic.
Traffic tie-ups this afternoon include a wreck I-20 westbound near the Spears Creek Church Road exit. Also an accident on Broad River at Marley. The one